Hello and welcome to the Nursing Mother's Room. My name is Regina. I am your host. I am a wife, mother, and here to bring you some amazing stories and testimonies of other moms and other experiences that moms have gone through. So today I have my friend Juliet here with me, and she has her journey into motherhood. And so we are so excited to have her, and we will waste no time. And we're so glad to have you. So, welcome, Juliet. So, you just gave birth to your first child,
Yes, I did.
and we are so excited that he is here. And I know that things have kind of been a little bit different than I think that you would have expected, especially with your first child. And so we just kind of wanted to sit and share and kind of dive into your story a little bit. So if you want to, I don't know where you'd want to start. I don't know if from before or during your pregnancy or just kind of where you'd want to begin.
I guess I could just yeah, so my story my son's name is Micah,
Hmm.
Micah Ruel. He is a cutie. And obviously I guess I'll go for my pregnancy. I had a really healthy pregnancy, really good pregnancy the whole time. And had no issues whatsoever, was really excited. And I just really couldn't believe that I was gonna be a mom the whole time I was pregnant. Um, and the Lord had very, you know, um, clear with us about Micah and purpose, and there's just a lot of prophetic movement that happened before and during the pregnancy, which now looking back makes a lot of sense. But basically, I went into labor at 39 weeks and 3 days. Went into labor naturally. And I had a beautiful labor. My water broke at around 1:45 in the morning. It woke me up, and it was kind of like that movie scene where it's like your water's breaking, and you're like, I cannot believe it, but you don't really know if your water's breaking because at the same time, it's not just like a gush of water. It's just like I think my water broke. And so I started having contraction around 2:15 in the morning, and by 6 a.m. I was fully dilated. So I labored extremely quickly, especially for my first child. Usually people will labor for days, hours, and I labored for 4 hours and I was ready to go. So my labor was very quick. And I thank the Lord for that. We labored at home. We did have a home birth. Kind of. But beautiful experience. Parents were in town, woke them up at around 4 a.m., put the worship music, candles everywhere. My husband was incredible. He like set up the whole place beautifully so that we could labor at home. My midwife came. They had, my midwife was a believer. She brought other believer midwives. So we're like worshiping and praying the whole labor. It was really beautiful. And then I started to push at around 9 something in the morning. Um, and even that part, I think the part that changes a little bit of things is that Micah came in breached, which means booty first. And so his little legs came out first, and and it was still like, babies can be born breached. It's a little different, but so we're he's coming out, and then long story short, it became an emergency situation very quickly because um his head got, I mean, it's hard to explain, but his head was kind of stuck, and so we're trying to get his head out. His whole body is out, and the more time that we spend doing that, we he starts to lose oxygen, so we have to call 911 and um basically go to the hospital. And even in the hospital they were struggling to get him out, and basically he went about 40 something minutes without oxygen. So when he came out, um he was not with us, you could say, and they resuscitated him rather quickly, which is already a miracle in itself. And then um He went straight to the NICU. I had a very intense life or death situation at the hospital. And so we were separated for a little bit. And he's still in the hospital. It's day 48 today. Um but the fact that he's still with us is a miracle. They gave us no hope for Micah. They said that the injuries were too harmful for his little brain. But we are just believing for a miracle. And so we are holding on to faith, to every word that God gave us about him and about his life, and we're just believing for his full healing and full restoration of his body and his brain. And that's kind of where we're at. So it's definitely been a journey of motherhood, you could say. You know, so yeah, that's pretty much the background story of where we're at and how we got here.
Yeah. I think it's definitely a wild journey, and I know that it's been a wild time for you, and I can't even imagine like going through all that you went through and still having like a smile on your face, like and being just so hopeful, and so joyful. And I think that that's been one of the biggest like testimonies is like seeing, you and, your husband Cade, like seeing you guys just still like joyful, because I know a lot of people who've gone through different situations who for them they're just kind of in this thing of like, why God, why me, why these situations and stuff. And I know that it's painful, I know that it's not easy, but I really like commend you guys for still just hoping and believing and having this like peace about the situation of knowing that like the Lord is in control.
Yeah.
um One of the first things that I, after hearing, kind of where you guys were at and stuff, was wondering, did you guys know ahead of time that he was breech?
Yeah, we knew ahead of time. We actually found out at 38 weeks that he was breached.
Mm-hmm.
And we started doing a few things to try to turn him, but I mean, at that point, it's really hard to, just because he's so tight in that space.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew, and there was we did a lot of research, and uh, our midwives had all done breech births before.
Mm-hmm.
His situation really is the one in a million. I mean, in the 17 years of one midwife, she had never come across a situation where a baby would not come out. And then in the 300 births of another midwife, she's also never seen something like that before. So I think for any mom listening to this situation who is wanting to have a home birth, please do not be scared. I mean, for me, it was still a beautiful experience. Like I don't have any like bad memories from the actual laboring process at home. It was really beautiful, and even like the birthing, like part of the birthing process was really peaceful at home. But I think that's one of the things that obviously as time has continued to pass is the reality of you know in the dark nights where like no one's there and it's just you and your baby, and you're looking at him and his state, because he just looks like he's sleeping. He doesn't even look like anything's wrong with him. Um, you ask yourself, like, did I make the right decision for him? And there's just that, there can be that rush of just guilt. And as a mom, you're like, the one thing that I was supposed to do, I couldn't do it, which was to birth him correctly. And so there's all the waves of guilt that can flood your mind, that if not filtered through the Holy Spirit, because I think those things are okay to feel as a mom. You want to do what's best for your child, and I obviously I never meant to do anything to harm him, but and I wouldn't even say that I did. I would say that this situation was just extremely intense because there was waves of guilt with everybody involved. But filtering that through the Holy Spirit, and also like shameless plug for counseling, because it's been one of the things that we jumped on right away. Just getting counsel and biblical counsel, where scripture is being read to us, and we have someone that is from stepping from a different perspective, or emotionally detached from the situation, who's speaking like, this is not your fault, like your body is made to birth, and you did what the best that you could. um you didn't know this would happen, because if you would have known, you would have made a different decision. So, I think that part has been one of the toughest struggles of this whole thing. It's like, oh my gosh, like there's a sense of forgiving myself, because I'm like, I couldn't have known. And I really do love my child, and I do really want the best for him. And oh my gosh, like if I could go back and change things, maybe I would. And all these things that just kind of flood your mind. But the reality is that God knew this would happen, and he allowed it to happen. And if he wanted to prevent it from happening, he would have, but he didn't. Um, and so who's to say that if I would have had a different birth, if I would have made a different decision of where to birth, that this wouldn't have happened? We just don't know that. So I think that's important to just filter everything through the Holy Spirit, and knowing that he is in control, and he was in control when that happened, and he allowed it for whatever reason. And that's where we just surrender and yield and say, okay, like, this is, you're in control, obviously there's nothing I can do. And so, yeah, but to answer your question, yes, we knew he was breached, and we prayed tons about our birthing plan when we found out. And we felt peace. It's hard to explain, and I know many people could even listen and have a judgmental perspective, which is okay, to each their own. But we were led by peace, and we prayed, and we're like, no, like everything's gonna be okay. And then, unfortunately, he's in that state now, which is even hard to talk about, because I'm like, but um but we're still trusting the Lord in whatever he's doing with this process. So
No, I think that's amazing. I think it's always hard because I think you as a mom, as a parent, you're going to have these moments for the rest of your life. You're going to think, if what I'm doing now, is it going to be beneficial for my child? Is this going to do, you know what I mean? So there's always going to be these like situations. And I had, when I was first pregnant with Bub, I was so terrified at the beginning because miscarriages have run in my family like rampantly. My mom had, I think, about 8 miscarriages. She was married for 5 years before they had any kids. And so when they got pregnant with me was just a miracle. And when I got pregnant, I just had this fear in the back of my mind, like, am I going to lose this baby? And, I think early stages, there's always, questions and stuff like that. But I was just in this constant state of fear of it. And it was like every little thing that I did, if I even had a sip of like decaf coffee, am I gonna, is this gonna cause me to lose my baby? Like, just, it was crippling fear that was ruling me every step of the way. And I was talking with a friend of mine, and she has 5 kids, and she was telling me, she goes, look, if you don't take a hold of that fear now, every step of the way, even when your kids are here, you're going to let that fear control you. She's like, once you get out of the first trimester, you're going to think, oh, is this going to happen? Am I going to have, is my child going to have birth defects? Are they going to have this? Are they going to have that? And she goes, and that's going to lead through everything. She's like, so you need to take a hold of that fear now. And so I even had to just like pray and surrender all of that to the Lord, because again, it's, yes, I care for my child, but the Lord cares for my child so much more.
right, right,
And I had to like really put myself in that. And so then, in the same aspect, when I went into labor at 35 weeks and we had our midwife, we had all this stuff planned, and I didn't want to have, medical interventions. I wanted to have a water birth. I wanted to do at a birthing center, and nothing went according to plan.
right,
Everything was thrown out the window. And I like looked back after I had Bub, and I was feeling so guilty of like I failed. Like, and I did all the stuff. I did the Christian hypnobirthing. I did all the pelvic exercises. I did, all the things that you're supposed to do to kind of like prepare your body to go into labor. I I still feel like I failed. And I was the one on, the other end, that I labored for 35 hours, and it was such a long process, and it was so strenuous and just such a tiring time that I look back at that and I like get frustrated because for me they were worried that they were going to have to do an emergency C-section. So I had gone almost a full 48 hours at that time of like no eating. They didn't let me have even ice chips because I needed to have my system cleared out in case I had a needed to have a C-section. And thankfully that wasn't the case, but I was exhausted. I was hungry. I like couldn't sleep, and then I couldn't move because of the epidural. So it was just all these different things. And then in the end, like my son came out and he was good and all that, but I still feel like I failed and I felt like my body didn't do what it was supposed to do.
Mhm.
And I dealt with that for the longest time, and I think we can really as moms like really be hard on ourselves. And I think that sometimes those lies of the enemy that come in, like yes, like you're saying, it's okay to feel these things, but it's not okay to let that like rule you and to let it like drive you and like future decisions and things like that. Because I think even now for me with this pregnancy, I've been thinking of things that I want to do differently than I did last one, and especially for like labor and delivery. And I still feel like there's a little bit of fear in the back of my mind that, like, hey, what if we end up in the same situation? Or what if we this? What if we that? And so I have to even just fight off the past experiences that keep trying to come back on and just trust and believe that this experience with this pregnancy is not even going to compare to the last one. And, um, and again, for me, I don't know why things happened the way that they did, but I know that the Lord was in control. And I think that, again, like you're saying, holding on to the Holy Spirit and filtering things through Him and really just believing and knowing that He's in control, I think is the best thing that you can do. And I, um, I can't, I can't even imagine those nights where, like you said, where it's just like you and Micah or you and Cade and you guys are on your own, and those moments where it's just kind of like everything kind of like sinks in, and I just see your strength, and I admire you. I really admire you, and I know that the Lord is doing something, whether we see it now or not. And again, we're just praying for him, and I think it's a beautiful experience where you guys are at. And I think another question I was going to ask was, how has your midwife been with this experience? How has she been kind of like feeling?
Well, we absolutely love our midwife. She's amazing. This really affected all present. Just it was a, you could say, a pretty disturbing scene. It was a beautiful scene and then a really disturbing scene. So everybody was affected. But obviously for her, she struggled with a lot of guilt and fear. Um, you know, she was afraid that this would happen again. She felt like this was her fault. What could she have done different? All the things. And I think I think she was expecting, and she was. I don't think I know, because she told us she was expecting us to like hate her and like be pissed, and that's just not something that we ever felt. Like, we understood this was an accident. Like, no one could have known this was going to happen. um and these things, and it would be, I understand that the aspect of like some parents would blame, but we just couldn't. She really was just with us until the very, very end. um she loves little Micah, and this has, based on her own words, stretched her faith so much more, where she's like really believing that Micah is going to recover, that he's going to get better. And so at first, obviously, there was that sense of like, she was struggling a lot. um but that has obviously gotten better over time, as we're believing in faith, and our relationship is great. She's still my midwife, so I do a lot of my postpartum stuff with her. So we get to talk a lot and bond in a sense, because we experience this together, and this is her first time experiencing something like this is my only time experiencing birth. And so I thank God that there has been no animosity from my heart, because I could see how that could have happened. But I think He's just kept me, in a sense, from experiencing some of the normal things that some other moms might have experienced, like shaming someone or being pissed at someone. That just has never been the case. And so she's amazing. We love her. I mean, she did nothing wrong. She did nothing wrong. She did everything right, and we still ended up in that situation. So but she's doing good. She's doing good now. We absolutely love her, and she's just been so intentional with keeping up with him and making sure that we see this through together. So
I think that's amazing. I think it is true that like sometimes in these situations, like we as people, I think just in like our flesh want to like find someone to blame. We want to like put the cause, we want to do all these things. And I think that it's a beautiful thing that you guys are still like close with her and still, in this place of being able to be in contact with her. And I think that, it's again, it is like you said, like you didn't know you were going to be in this situation, and it's one of these crazy things that I just, like, a lot of people when I was pregnant, they were trying not to tell me their horror stories in different situations, but I think that in certain situations it's good to hear these stories and hear these different things just so you can be, made aware or like a possibility of something. You know what I mean? Because without understanding or hearing a story like yours, in my mind, I wouldn't even think that that could be a possibility. You know what I mean? Like, I've heard the few and far between that there are babies who are born breech, but like never even thinking that like, oh my gosh, like that, that situations like this can happen or that babies even are still like born breech. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that there are so many different aspects of motherhood and pregnancy and, labor and delivery that like we still don't know. And even with all the doctors and the science and all the studying that they do, that I think that there's still just a lot for us to learn. And I think that hearing stories and experiences like this is um not only for us to like hear and to think of, but to also kind of be prepared for in a sense. You know what I mean? Or to like understand that like, okay, this is a possibility. How can I, come about this? How can we, prepare for something like this? Obviously in this situation you like can't prepare, but I think that knowing that these things are possibilities, I think is just it's beneficial to have, the knowledge of this kind of situation,
yeah.
but yeah, and I know that you've been going through obviously stuff like postpartum. But I wanted to ask too, how has Cade been with everything?
Honestly, he's a rock star. I admire him
Hmm.
so much just because he has really held us together and has taken the kind of man of the house role in this situation so gracefully. Um, he's fully dependent on the Lord and has allowed himself to experience the ups and downs. We call it the NICU roller coaster. Some days are okay. And some days are really hard and like being there, you feel like you're going crazy. But he has just leaned on Jesus so well. Like that's his hope is that God will come through and that I think we say even if he doesn't, because that's the reality is we have 100% faith that God will do something and that God will perform a miracle. But even if he doesn't, he's still God and he is still good. And so seeing that from him has carried me through in my especially my weak moments as a mom postpartum, going through the ups and downs of that. He has just seeing him be so like with the Lord about everything, it leaves me no choice but to do that as well because we have to do this together. And so I'm really proud of him and I tell him that he he's just doing such a great job. Like it's we say that when you get cut, you see what bleeds and you could be a cute Christian all your life. You can go to church, you can worship God, you can preach. You can preach really good. You can talk about faith and mercy and grace and the walking with God while you're suffering, but when you get cut by life and you're in a situation where you're like, my child's life is is hanging on whether I believe God can do it or not. Man, you see what bleeds. And I think with Cade, I have seen what bleeds and his everything that he has preached from a pulpit or preached in private. I'm seeing it being lived out. And so he's amazing. I think I'm so glad that we've said this over and over. We're so glad we're married because because man, your spouse can really determine a lot of things in a season like this if you're not with the right person. And so I'm just so happy that he is Micah's dad and that he is my husband. And yeah, I mean, I think it's crazy because even in this situation, I'm like, I'm so happy that we have a family and that we're going through this together. It's gelled us in a crazy way, but also just like it's allowed us to see each other in the midst of deep suffering. And so yeah, I have nothing bad to say about him at all.
I love that. I think it's definitely true. Who you marry can shape so many things, so many things. It was pretty funny when I had Bub and we were in the hospital for an extra week because he had jaundice. I was sitting there with my mom because she had come to the hospital and sent Ryan to just, go take a shower, go catch a break. And he had left and we were sitting there and my mom looked at me and she was like kind of sitting and I could tell she was thinking about something and then she kind of like stopped and I was like, "What's up?" And she's like, "I don't want to bring things up, but she's like, I'm just sitting here thinking about if you were in the situation and you were still with your ex, she's like, what this would have looked like." And I was like, I would have been here by myself the entire time. Like, my ex and I had talked about getting married, having a family, all these things. And he just was never in a place to actually like fulfill that.
Yeah.
And I just like look and I just like look back on situations like that. And it really, really is like Ryan through the whole process was my rock. And even when I got the epidural, I was out of it. Like I was it was funny. He tells stories about how I was sitting there and I was saying something like, "Oh, I don't want to go to grandma's house" or something. He's like, "What? What are you talking about?" And I was literally like thinking my thoughts out loud. And so he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "You're talking about going to your grandma's." And I was like, "Oh, did I say that out loud?" And he like laughs about that, but I was like completely out of it. And so when the doctors would come in and ask different questions or different things, or we're going to do this, we're going to do that, he was very much like, "No, we're not doing that," or "We're going to do this, we're going to do this." And I was so thankful to have such a husband who was willing to like advocate for me for certain things. And it's one of the biggest things that I tell other young adults when they're considering dating and all this. Because I knew a lot of people who would throw the verse around and say like, "Oh, better to be married than burn with lust," and then they're divorced like a year later. And I'm like, it's because like they start to realize that marriage is a lot more than just who you're compatible with romantically or sexually. And I am so thankful for the husband that I have, and I see Cade with you, and I think it's just, a beautiful, beautiful relationship that you guys have, and just, knowing your guys' story too, and the journey for you guys to being married and where you guys are at now. I just think that, the Lord really has brought you guys together, and it's just such a beautiful thing to have such an amazing husband. And I think sometimes, especially in, the trenches of postpartum, my husband was like such an advocate for things. He was pulling me out of stuff. Like I would be worried about, the baby. Like, is he breathing? Is he this? Is he that? And I had such bad postpartum anxiety that like I think there was like almost like 2 days that like I didn't sleep because I was just holding him and I just didn't want to put him down. And Ryan was like, "Hey, I need you to trust the Lord that he's going to take care of your baby if he's asleep in his bassinet. Like you need to try to get some sleep." And I just was in such this like fog and this like state to where I just was so consumed with just making sure the baby was okay that I couldn't pull myself out of it. And so he would even just like get on his knees and pray with me or, pull me out of it or just talk to me or, pray over me and pray over the baby. And it really is like for me, I am such an emotional person that like the first thing that I do is something happens and I'm like, "We need to go to the doctors. We need to this, we need to that." And my husband will be like, "Hey, let's take a second. Let's assess the situation. Let's pray." And then half the time it's like we pray and everything's like taken care of. And I'm just so thankful for that because we'd rack up such large hospital bills if we went every time that I thought something was wrong. And I think the Lord really does bring us people to help, our spouses. Like to my husband definitely balances me out because I'm the crazy Latina over here, and he's my calm white boy who, sits in the back and is just like, okay, we're good. Like take a breather. And yeah, I just think it's an amazing thing to have, such a strong husband that is there to like advocate for you, to walk through these situations with you. And it's so funny too because some people are like, "Oh yeah, well, the person that I'm with or that I'm dating like is completely different or, we're like my husband and I are polar opposites. But when it comes to situations and serving the Lord and, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
And it's like, there are so many situations that are going to grow you together. And that's why it's like having your firm foundation in the Lord even before you're with somebody is key because then when you come together, it just makes you stronger.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so.
So, so we've been talking postpartum too. How do you feel? Obviously, there's an added layer for this with you,
Yeah.
obviously with the things that you're going through. How do you feel that you have been like postpartum, like physically, like, in this place of, I mean, even if you're comfortable sharing, were you planning on breastfeeding? Like, I know that this obviously is like a completely different situation.
So, um, yeah, my postpartum, I would say there's a lot of things. The reality and going to the Lord, because I think that's the most important part is being realistic and going to him and saying, Lord, I feel so robbed of like everything, including postpartum. I don't feel like I can just have a postpartum experience because with Micah being in the NICU with his diagnosis, with you know, everything that they're saying about him, what he will be, what he won't be, what he will do, what he won't do. Um, it just doesn't feel like we've from everything. It still feels like we're in the thick of everything. And it's been as I said before, 48 days of all this, every day. Wake up, go to the hospital, spend the day with him, come home, do it again the next day. And so postpartum for me, my the reality is I had really, really bad injuries from birth just because they had to uh cut whatever they had to cut to get him out. And so there were a few things that happened here at the house to get him out. And then when we got to the hospital, a few more interventions that happened to get him out. And so my healing process was just a bit different just because my injuries were really deep. And so that made it harder because I couldn't just be on bed rest. I'm up and at the hospital, and so I'm trying to rest at the hospital. I'm trying to sit at the hospital by his bassinet, put my feet up, but it took a little longer to heal everything just because of my lifestyle wouldn't really allow for just rest in that time. But one thing I really thank the Lord that is still happening, which I am like, this is the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit only is my husband and I have not lost sleep one night this whole process. We sleep like rocks every single night. I mean, I think that just is part of our faith as well. It's like we know that Micah is we know that we haven't seen the promises fulfilled in his life. So we know that he's going to be okay because God has never spoken or promised something and not fulfilled that. And so there's that piece of like, we're going to go home and he's going to be okay. And we want to take him with us. And we grieve every time we leave the hospital because that's another day that he's not with us at home. But God has to be up to something because he doesn't just do this for no reason. He doesn't just allow these things for no reason. And so, we go home and we sleep every night. And we sleep like rocks. And that's something that I'm like, I would have never thought that with my kid in the hospital, I could sleep so good. It just kind of you almost feel bad because you're like, I slept so good. Like, what the heck? Um, and so sleeping has helped. And then also we have not had an appetite one time. I'm like, we're eating. Like, we're gonna feast and we are going to celebrate the miracle we have not seen yet. And so that's kind of how we take every meal. It's just like we're celebrating what we have not seen. And so that has helped a lot of the postpartum. Um, I think the Lord, there has been no postpartum depression or anything like that, because I feel like it would be so easy to sip into that. But the reality is genuinely, and I know I keep bringing it up, but He has just kept us. Like, God has just kept us, and it's so evident and so real. I was singing in the worship team yesterday, and they were like, "Oh, like, you have a son?" I was like, "Yeah." And like, how, how old is he? I was like, "He's a month and a half." And they're like, "He's a month and a half, and you're like on the team already?" And I'm like, "What am I supposed to do? Like, we're just gonna serve while we wait." Um, and so that's just our, other people are different, but we just felt led to, like, let's just start serving and start being a part of sharing our gifts with the church, with the capital C church. And so it has helped a lot of the postpartum, but nonetheless, there has been aspect of postpartum, like resting and being with your baby and bonding with him, that we haven't had. And so in that aspect, there has been a lot of grieving what we wanted all of this to be. Uh, and the exciting part of sharing your baby, and you want to show him off and you want everybody to see him, and not being able to do that right now because of his condition, and wanting to hold your baby. I think that has been the hardest, is as a mom, you have I want to hold my baby, and I should be able to hold my baby if I want to, but the reality is I can't just hold him whenever I want, because it takes a whole team to put him on me. And so holding him, I mean, he's been alive for 48 days. I've held him 4 or 5 times for like 2 to 3 hours here and there straight. And so there's that deep grief of, like, you feel like you're losing, and then you're being robbed of time, and he's growing and he's gaining weight and he's changing, and you can't, you know, appreciate that as much as other moms do. And so there's that. Even, I would say, even last night, being 100% vulnerable was one of the hardest nights. I'm just, I was broken yesterday at at the hospital, and it was crazy because the Lord had spoken to me that morning through uh just while at church, and there's this miracle altar call, and man, I left full of faith, like, we can totally do this, like, Micah's totally be fine, he's gonna be fine. And then after the hours pass and it's just quiet in the hospital room, and you're just looking and you're just watching your baby, it just broke me, and I was like just so sad. And it was time to go. We're almost passing out in the hospital, so my husband's like, let's go home, let's get some rest. And I was just like, I don't want to leave tonight, like, I want to stay with him. And the reality, I wanted to hold him, so I'm like laying on his little belly, looking up at him, and just loving on him and telling him I loved him. And I was just broken. I was like, just, this is the hardest thing we have ever done. And being, having moments of anger in this postpartum experience, where I just like, just really trying not to, like, not trying to be angry at God, but also knowing that He can totally handle my feelings, and just being like, why? Like, why is this happening? Why is this taking so long for you to do something? Like, we are holding on to everything that you have said, and we are not seeing it. Like, why are you, it almost was like, why are you teasing us with his life? And then the reality, and I know this is like, to talk about, especially, it's heartbreaking. Some moms will never understand this feeling of, you want to be at a place where you're like, God, I'm believing, and I have faith, and I think faith is not something that my husband and I have struggled with. Trust is. Trusting that God will actually do what He said He would do is the hard part. Knowing that He can do it, that's easy. We've seen it, we've read it, cool. But trusting that He will, being certain in something that you just have a word of God for, is the hard part. And so getting face to face with the Lord and saying, why? Like, why are you letting this happen to us? Like, why? Not just us, but like, being broken over your son, and being like, God, you see him, and you see him in this state, and you're choosing not to do something right now. Why? Like, it doesn't make sense. You're a good God. You are faithful. and would not, like, why is he not whatever. And also just like the aspect of like, you I haven't heard my baby cry, I haven't seen him look at me, like all the things that mom just like, you know, take for granted just because it's normal. They're supposed to cry, they're supposed to look at you, they're supposed to, it's like, no, that's such a gift. Like your child looking at you, your child crying for you is such a gift. You know, we haven't gotten that. But with the breastfeeding, we have been I would say we have been so blessed. One of the things that we asked the Lord, where my husband asked the Lord, was, God, allow her to produce breast milk as a sign that you are bringing life to my gut, and like let us do something for him. And that same day that he prayed that, I started producing breast milk, and I was like, oh my gosh, which was already hard enough because I'm like exclusively pumping. But he has been on breast milk this whole time, and he takes it very well. He gets fed through a feeding tube, but his body processes it really well. He has gained weight. He's all chubby, and cute. So that has been a gift, being able to provide something. Because when you look at him and you're like, I can't do anything. I can't heal him. I can't wake him up. I can't make him cry. I can't do anything. I can only bring him comfort and feed him. And so that's what I'll do. And so that's what we've been doing with the breast milk, is just the Lord has been providing that. I'm exclusively pumping, which is a full-time job. But no, we've been doing that, and it's been a gift to be able to provide him with the nutrition that he needs, at least, while he, we believe, is healing up and is getting ready to wake up soon here in any day now. So yeah, that's how that's been with the postpartum breastfeeding and all that. So
Man, it literally is. It's wild. The things that, that I mean, I'm even just thinking back to when I had Bub and, he would cry and I'd get up in the middle of the night or, be sad from that or I'd be exhausted. And I think that I think that it is when you have those things, you can easily take it for granted. But when you don't, it gives you a different perspective. And I know that it's not this thing to like guilt people into that. Like, oh yeah, you should appreciate, your baby crying. Like, no, like these things are still hard. Your baby crying, like no mom wants to hear, their baby in pain or anything and stuff like that. But I really do think that it does shift your perspective and give you, a different way to look at your situations when you're like, okay, yeah, I'm thankful that my child is, that I'm able to hear them cry, that I'm able to comfort them, that I'm able to do these things. And I think even in your situation, being able to have that and still being able to like, to pump milk, to still be able to produce milk is such a gift. And it is a miracle itself because I've known of other women who have been in, situations where they've gone through trauma after they've had their kids and then it just stops and there's like nothing. And then they have to switch their kids to formula and stuff, which obviously is not bad, but it's also like you want to, as a mom, to be able to do those things for your kid.
right.
You want to be able to comfort them. You want to be able to bond with them. You want to be able to have just the normal experiences,
Yeah.
And so I think where you're at and your perspective of it, like, yes, it's hard, but again, like it's like it's just like this tension of the waiting and like you said, like you're in this of like believing on the Lord and in the situation and believing he's going to come through, but it's also like, man, what the heck?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of Christians go through tough situations and I commend you for being in counseling because I'm such an advocate for counseling and again godly counseling because
Right.
again I don't need to just process stuff in a worldly perspective. I need to be able to go back to the word and be like, hey, be
Right.
redirected. But I'm such a firm believer in counseling and just the process of, even just working through some stuff like just mentally. Like I need to just even kind of just sometimes even talking about a situation or a story helps me kind of be like, oh my gosh, like, and you see things differently. But I think a lot of Christians, they go through things and they go through experiences, and it's almost like they're afraid to even question or to even be like honest and be like, hey, I know that the Lord is faithful, but this situation sucks.
Yeah.
Where I'm at sucks. What I'm feeling sucks. And I think sometimes people can feel like they're not actually having faith or believing because they're questioning these things, because they're going through these emotions and these experiences. And I love that you're in this place of like, hey, like, Lord, I trust you, but I'm also having a hard time with it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay to admit. I think it's a beautiful place to be in because again, the Lord didn't tell us to just be, we're not robots. We've been given the emotions. We've been given, the emotional capacity to handle situations. Like Jesus wept over
Yeah.
Lazarus.
Yeah.
Jesus felt these things.
Right.
And it's again, it's he knew that he was going to be raised. He knew that the Lord was going to come through. He knew that these things were going to be okay, but it still in that moment was like he was still human. He still
Right.
felt for his friend. He still
Right.
felt the empathy and felt the emotions of everything. And so I love that you're in this place of being able to be vulnerable and honest about it because I think sometimes a lot of people are like, no, God is good. God's good. And that's not a bad place to be, but it's also this thing of like, you're able to feel these things. It's not wrong. You're not sinning because you're like, "Hey Lord, I'm trusting you, but I'm also like, what the heck?"
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
just yeah.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a daily battle between the spirit and the flesh because I tell my husband, I'm like, I understand. Part of me has access to kind of understand what the Lord is doing, preparing us, giving us something to talk about. I mean, like, this doesn't happen to everybody. I would say it happens to very few people where labor goes so well, delivery goes so difficult that your baby, loses oxygen to the brain. And I would even say, when you messaged me about this podcast, we've been very private. Like we have been kind of off of social media just because, not because we're ashamed, but because we are purposefully keeping our circle small because we just want to tell people that are going to be praying. Like that's it. Like we don't really want to like blast this like, oh look, woe to us, all these things. But in a sense, when you asked me and I told Kate, he's like, what are you gonna say? And I was like, I'm gonna say yes. And a part of it is also there is faith, I think a lot of testimonies. You hear the testimony, you hear the beginning, the middle, and the end. And a lot of people don't stay in the middle for too long. They don't really talk about the middle for too long and they just talk about the ending. But the reality is, as I'm filming this podcast, my child is still in the hospital, and he's still has a poor prognosis, and he still hasn't woken up, and we still have not seen the miracle that we are praying for. And I think there's something powerful about being willing to share a testimony that has not finished yet. It would be easy to be like, I'm gonna hold off on the podcast, and I think that would be respected. But I'm gonna hold them off on the podcast, and then when the podcast happens, Mike is right here, and I'm like, look, he made it, and everyone's like, great. But the reality is that hasn't happened yet, and we don't know when that's gonna happen. We are believing that it will, and we sound crazy, but even like we've had nurses, just the Lord has been so how do I say this? Good just doesn't, it's not our good, it's his good. It's not our good like, oh, I'm good. It's like the good that God said when he created the world and he looked at it and he said it's good. It's that good. It's a different kind of good, but he is that good. And so, you know, we are nurses are coming in tears saying like, I admire your faith. Like seeing you guys show up every day for Micah and hearing what the doctors are saying, which the doctors are saying your child will not make it. On this was on day 5. It's day 48. Your child's heart will eventually stop because it's his body's not working, his brain is not working. your child, if you decide to continue care and take him home, he'll be a vegetable baby. He'll never cry. He'll never look at you. He'll never cry for you. He'll just be like a body there that's growing and that you're feeding, and he won't ever do anything. And eventually his brain will become like a bubble of water, and he'll just be like a body that you're keeping alive. And probably the best thing to do is to discontinue care and let him pass. I was on day 5, and it's a room of like 7 doctors, like 7 people, and then there's Kate and I, and we're just like, we're gonna believe for a miracle, and we're just gonna continue to advocate for our baby, because this is, and I would respect, this is the thing, you have to respect your parents that would have taken that and said, you know what, because I believe that there is grace for what the Lord is asking you to do. So there has been the prayer, the very difficult prayer that most moms will never pray, which is, Lord, give us grace either to give him back to you or to keep fighting. Whichever one you want us to do, we want to be obedient, and we need grace for it. We need wisdom. We need you to tell us what you want us to do, because we don't want to make the wrong decision for Micah right now. We know that he's yours. We know that you have everything under control, but we are still stewarding. And so we want to steward this time right, and we want to do what's right for him. And I have been in my private, deep, dark moments being like, Lord, if you want us to give Micah back to you, we will. Like, if really this was his purpose, was to teach us whatever, and I carried him for 9 months, and this was it. I mean, it would take a long time for me to recover, but he's yours, and you care more for him than I do, and you love him more than I do. And so whatever you want, and I have prayed those prayers not because I want to give up, but because I think it's important to stay open to what the Lord is asking of you and what he wants. And so we've asked those questions, and the reality is we still every day feel grace to show up and keep fighting and keep believing. And so we're like, okay, that's what we're gonna do. So I mean, this journey, I would say, if I could sum up everything to the moms, I mean, I don't shame any mom, like how you were saying about, you know, just because some babies don't cry and you should appreciate your baby crying, it doesn't mean that like sleepless nights are easy. It doesn't mean that um postpartum is easier for you than it is for me, because at least you have your baby at home. It's just, what it does is it gives perspective of like, this is hard, but it takes away that this is hard, period, and I'm crying and I'm so depressed because my postpartum experience. But instead it says, and I tell Kay this all the time, when Micah was a month old, we showed up to the hospital, and I'm like, happy 1 month old, and he's reactive, so he hears voices, and he squirms now, which is a miracle in itself, because they said he would never move. He lifts up his little leg, it's so cute. And he says hi, and he like holds it up. It's so cute. But I was like, hi, Bo. And he like lifting his leg, and I just look at him and I'm like, you know what, we are in this situation, babe, but we're not a graveyard. We are saying happy 1 month old, and our baby is reactive. And even in our situation, we know that it could be worse. We think it's the worst thing that's ever happened to us, but we know that some moms don't have a hospital to go see their baby. They don't have their little hand to hold anymore. They don't have, some moms go through a difficult labor and the baby doesn't make it at all. The baby doesn't get a heartbeat back. And so the fact that Micah did, and that he's fighting, and he's a little warrior, and he's a month old, and he's just, to us, he looks like he's sleeping. He is chilling. Like, for all we know, we are suffering, and he's like, I'm good. Like, I'm just here. Um, some moms don't get that. Some moms don't get to see their baby turn a month old. Some moms don't, they get the worst news where their baby's born stillborn. And it could always be worse. And so for us, even for whatever mom is listening, the hard situation, this podcast is not meant to say like your situation is not bad. You have your baby at home, he or she is healthy, you're healthy, whatever. But it does give perspective, as it could always be worse. And so to be grateful for what you have, and we are grateful that Micah is still with us. We are grateful that he's fighting. We are grateful that we are believing that we'll see a miracle. And we're grateful that we feel grace from God to continue advocating for him and fighting for his life and continue care until God opens his little eyes. And that day's gonna be crazy. But with doing this podcast, I think that's one of the main reasons why I said yes, is because I think people need to start sharing testimonies before they see the breakthrough. It's like, it's okay if your testimony doesn't have the breakthrough yet. It doesn't make it any less of a testimony. So I'm standing here believing and saying he's going to wake up, and that puts me on blast, right? It puts our situation on blast, but that's okay, because if you're listening, you know, now you have something to pray for. It gives you something to be grateful for in your situation that you're not in ours, because I wouldn't wish this on anybody. But also, not just to applaud the faith or anything like that, but to see like it is possible to have joy, it is possible to have peace, it is possible to still have the fruits of the spirit, it is possible to wrestle with God just like Jacob did, it is possible to say, I will not let go until you bless us. Like, I'm gonna fight for this every day. I'm exhausted, but I'm not letting you go until you wake him up. I'm not letting you go until you speak and say something and give us our daily bread. And so, there's all those aspects, and so that's mainly why I wanted to do this podcast and kind of share where we're at right now on day 48, because we are believing that we'll see the miracle, and maybe we'll do another one where I'm like, he did it. And so I think it's powerful for any mom that's listening to share. Don't wait until, or anybody that's listening, don't wait until you see what you're praying for to share what the Lord has already done, because Micah has not woken up, but God has still done so much in this 48 days. And we're believing that we're going to see it, and we just have this certainty of what we do not see. But I feel we both feel really strongly to still share the testimony, to be as we and what we've learned, what I've learned as a mom with my very strange story of motherhood, um so that to inspire other people, mainly for that, like God is in the middle of the testimony as well. And so don't like not say that part. Don't just say what happened and then what God did, but man, we sit in that middle gray area, and it's tough. It is very tough, but yeah, I think it's important to talk about that.
No, definitely. I think again, I admire you guys in your faith because I know that it's the Lord, but I don't know if I would be, as like joyful as you are, you know? Like I said, I'm a very emotional person. I could let my emotions run rampant, and thank God for my husband to ground me. But I really commend you guys, and just your faith and your joy and just where you guys have been as a whole, like seeing you guys out, seeing Cade preaching again, like seeing all these things that you guys are doing. It's just beautiful to see that, you guys aren't letting the sorrow and these things that could easily just keep you, in this like dark place, in this
Yeah.
state of isolation and all of that. And I think that again, with you guys talking about these things and sharing, your testimony, it is building up the faith of others.
Yeah.
It's building up my faith in this. And we've been praying for you guys, since even before Micah was born, and so even more so now. And I think even for the prayer and worship night that you guys had, Ryan was able to go to that, and he just came back and he's like, man, he's like, they are in such an amazing place. And he goes, it's all the Lord. He
Mhm.
goes, it's all the Lord. And he goes, it's beautiful to see where they're at, because again, it's like we don't know how we would be in your
Right.
guys' situation, and I just kind of going into the real for the real talk, our segment that we do, that I had sent you. I was reading it, and for the viewers at home, I'll post it for you guys and post the link. But I was reading this, and I just felt like this was such a good reminder, but it also just reminded me of you in it, that it's like it is this yes and
Yeah.
situation,
Mhm.
yes, the Lord has been faithful. Yes, we're seeing it, but and we're still waiting on the breakthrough. And I'll just read kind of what it says. It was a little like poem that somebody had written, basically, and it says, "The Lord who wept. In my moments of deep sadness, you come closer than anyone ever could. You wrap me in peace I cannot understand and whisper hope into the painful places. You don't rush me through my sorrow, you sit with me in it, loving and gracious, because you wept too. Thank you for your gentleness etched on every page of my story, even this one. Thank you for gathering every tear as though it were a pearl. Each one known, each one kept. Jesus, when my heart is heavy, let your presence be heavier still. And I just was reading that and it made me like it brought tears to my eyes.
Mm.
Because again, it's like, yes, you obviously want to be out of this. You want to be on the other side of this.
Yeah.
But it's again in that waiting, in the midst of it, what is our response? What how are we seeing these situations? We could sit there and again blame God and be mad at God, but also understanding that because of who he is and his attributes and his characteristics, he's weeping with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's there with you guys. He's in the hospital room with you guys. He's in the hospital room when you're not there with Micah. He's hanging on to him. He's right there with him. He's growing his little body even now.
Yeah.
And I just think that it just puts this perspective of who the Lord is and how much he like truly loves us. And it's again like, yes, we feel all these things, but he's also going through it with us. So I just yeah, I love this and I commend you for having the strength to share your story and for coming on here and talking with us. And I just believe that this is gonna, if not to touch others, it's definitely touched me. And again, we're in the trenches with you guys and praying and believing and fighting on hands and knees for Micah and for you guys, and that the Lord is with you guys and continuing to give you guys peace and just strength. And I think even through it all, the Lord is still, like you said, the Lord has been faithful and he's going to continue to be faithful. And he's right there with you guys in Micah.
Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, we really are believing for breakthrough, and we're just trusting God regardless. And so it
Yeah.
is exciting.
Well, I definitely am going to be excited for the next time that we meet and to have
Yes.
the testimony and have little Micah right there with you.
Yes. In
And
his name.
yes, we're believing. We're believing. And we just pray favor and just blessing. And again, that the Lord even touch his body now, even while we're speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and we love you guys. And I'm so thankful to have you on and for you to have shared your story. And I'm very excited to see what the Lord is going to do.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So, to our viewers at home, we pray that this has touched you in some way. And if you have questions or want to share your story, please go ahead and email us and follow us on social media. And we will see you next time here in the Nursing Mothers Room.